I know for this year, there's an airport project that needs to happen. It could be a number of different things. This does not take into account any of the infrastructure costs for the water, wastewater, or streets. This is just stuff that's paid from the general fund, which is mostly public safety, and then also parks and rec. So again, this kind of goes back to what I was saying before, that I think the city has a revenue problem, especially as you move forward with the flattening revenue base. In your costs, I mean, we assumed 2% annual increases in salaries and benefits, which in my experience could happen, but it's more than likely going to be higher than that, especially benefit costs. And then the next scenario we looked at was, okay, so what happens if the city doesn't spend $650,000 a year? What happens if the city just does the bare minimum, whatever it needs to do to basically keep the lights on and make sure that things don't fall apart? And so I've represented this scenario in two ways. What you see before you is the graphic representation, and that red line, that is your general fund balance as a percent of last year's operating expenses, because that's how your fund balance policy is determined. So that number by your fund policy should be 25% or higher. And you can see there are some pinch points really starting in, you have this operating deficit that's drawing down that fund balance because we're using cash on hand to pay for those expenditures. And the city doesn't really start coming out of that until probably, I say about 2031, 32. And that's largely because the city's deferring a lot of its capital costs and then reining in expenses as much as it possibly can. Even so, your fund balance at the low point is only $714,000, which is pretty small for a community of this size. The idea with a fund balance is that you have enough cash on hand to cover unexpected costs. It's like your savings account in many ways. So again, this tells me that the city has a revenue problem, or you have to cut expenses in the general that are paid from the general fund in order to right this ship. And I think this tells it a little bit more on the next slide too, where I show the actual numbers and line items. So yeah, the only difference between this scenario and the one you saw before, where the fund balance goes negative, is we've changed. Basic capital expenditures are only about $330,000 a year. And the previous scenario showed $650,000 annually.
Go one more to the grab now.
Oh, sorry.
Never mind. There. This one? One more forward. That one. So the house. Or is that the same one?
That's okay. I think you can jump forward to considerations for council, and then maybe I'll pause there and ask, you guys feel free to ask me any questions that you possibly have. After this slide, we'll go a little bit more into the hypothetical scenarios that really, I think staff is just looking for some direction from council on what they should focus on. None of the scenarios I'm presenting tonight have been fully vetted, right? Like everything still requires a fair amount more of analysis before I think council would be able to make an informed decision. But some of the things that we thought about, okay, revenues and expenses, that's really what it comes down to. So what can you do on the revenue side? Well, you can get more revenue. We looked at building out a soaking pools. I know that that's a project that has been batted around a little bit internally. So in principle, this may be able to net, about $680,000 to probably about $1.5 million, depending on demand and depending on the scope and cost of the project. The other thing that council might look at is pursuing a sales tax or property tax increase from voters. Obviously not for this year because that deadline has already passed. but it may be something to consider for future years. Or, the flip side of this on expenses, explore the feasibility of moving the fire department into a fire protection district, and/or cutting programs or staff to right-size the budget.
And so if we explored the feasibility of the fire protection district, that would also involve us having to go to the voters as well. Is that correct, or?
I believe it would, because you'd be looking for a tax increase.
Yeah.
And we ran numbers for that and what, the very last scenario in here, and so I'll talk a little bit more about what exactly that would look like, the cost of that. And I think maybe, I don't know, do you want to start there, or we can work backwards, or?
We
Okay.
just could go with your flow.
Okay, all right. So on the next slide, keep going. So this shows the hypothetical scenario for the soaking pools. And our assumptions here are very conservative, keeping in line with what we did on the previous slides. And the only things we changed here are, we took a very conservative look at the soaking pool revenue side, meaning there's a low, medium, and high revenue scenario, depending on how many people come in and use the facility. So we use the low scenario here. And as you can see, there's obviously a bump, right? And the city's general fund balance, while it's still not quite at 25%, that decline is mitigated significantly, and it prevents the city's general fund from going negative in 2029. So this could be something that council is interested in exploring. A good next step for this one would be exploring what sort of demand there would be for a project like this, and then kind of getting your arms around what current costs would look like for this. And then, one of the other things I talked about, even though it says debt financed at the title here, given the city's trajectory, I don't think it makes sense for the city to take out like a bank loan or issue bonds for a project like this. Ideally, the city would get a grant. Free money is the best money, right? So ideally, the city would get a grant to fund this project. And there's a couple of different avenues to explore. They're obviously very competitive, but it's still worth, throwing your hat in the ring. The other side of this would be looking at, would be doing some sort of debt financing, but something that's very low cost. So we talked about USDA loans. I don't know if this would qualify under a utility or not, maybe. Or maybe it would qualify under some sort of economic development initiative, because there would be new jobs created as part of this initiative. But those might be things that the city could look at to see how to finance this. What I would not suggest right now, based off the facts that I've seen, is taking on like a bank loan or paying this from cash. So the next slide, so this one shows what a potential sales tax ask would look like. And so I put in here 48 cents because sales tax, that's pretty common for most Colorado cities and towns. Property taxes, you could do a property tax. It would just be a little bit more unusual for a city. Nonetheless, it's going to create the same sort of revenues, whether you put it on the sales tax side or the property tax side. So in this case, I've assumed 48 cents, and this would generate about $1 million a year for the city. And this would allow the city to, work towards right-sizing the budget, and then also provide funds for some of its capital improvement projects that are paid from the general fund. And then the next slide shows what would happen if you did both. If you did the soaking pool project and also a 48 cents sales tax ask. And you can really see, you really don't dip below the fund balance policy 2026, that's the low point, and then it really starts to increase in the back end. And so typically, when my clients do a sales tax increase, and let's say it's tied to a project or something along those lines, there's generally a sunset with it. This isn't something that, in my experience, most communities are just looking to bank a whole bunch of money, right? Like, the idea is to put this money to work for the community, and if the city doesn't have a need for all of the allowable mill levy, it either goes down or it sunsets. Like, for example, if you issue sales taxes and it's related to a debt finance project, when that debt is paid off, the sales tax goes down. So then you're only paying for the operations and maintenance of that project. But these are all considerations and kind of details to work through. I simply wanted to give you guys some things to think about, like food for thought, basically, as you start moving forward with the financial planning side of things. And the last one is the fire. Last one. This is the fire protection district. As you can see, there's a substantial impact, like positive impact on the city's revenues. And so on this scenario, we moved all of the fire department's revenues, which are really more, like fire planning permits and reviews and that sort of stuff. So it's not much revenue, but the cost, when you include also the 2023 COPs, which were for the fire station, when you move all of that over, it creates so much room for other projects and other programs within the general fund. Because you're basically moving, $2 and change million every year over to the fire protection district. In running some back of the envelope numbers, the required mill levy to do this would be, so in talking to the fire chief, he indicated for a fire protection district, it would be about $5.5 million would be the total operating budget for South Ark and this, I guess, absorbing the fire department. So the mills for that would be about 12.4, which is a substantial increase from what South Ark is currently levying, which is about 4.5 mills. But again, these are back of the envelope numbers. And so it'd be something for, if this is what council wants to dig in deeper into, then we'd have to look at, well, what costs would be absorbed and, how would this get split up? And maybe there's a scenario where the city creates some sort of subsidy, like an operating subsidy that it hands over to South Ark to mitigate some of that property tax increase. I don't know. It's just, like I said, food for thought for council to consider.
So we're looking at the ending fund balances, where you're up to, 213%? Is that on you? I mean, typically, like best practices, what percent, I know you don't want to dip below 25, but you also don't want to become a hoarder.
Sure.
Because the whole idea is to invest back in the community.
Yeah.
So,
It's a pretty difficult question to answer, to be honest, because every community is going to have different needs. And sometimes, the percentage, like if you have a town that's, 500 people, maybe your percentage is going to be a lot higher relative to your operating budget, because absolute dollars also matter, right? So, 25% for a community like this size, I would say that's probably accurate. That's probably on par, give or take a few percentage points. But you are right. I mean, the idea is that you are reinvesting into the community and putting those tax dollars to work. In my experience, if a community is sitting on, a ton of money, let's say it's city of Salida and you guys have $100 million in your bank account, as a taxpayer, I might question, being like, well, what are you doing with this?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that this kept the cost at the minimum level. It didn't add in all the capital improvement we'd be able to start
Yeah.
doing.
Oh,
Yeah,
Okay.
so, yeah, so this would mean that we could start fixing the bathrooms in the park, that we could start, those costs aren't in here.
Amy is
We'd be
100%
spending it.
correct.
We wouldn't actually grow it to that level.
Yes, and Amy is 100% correct. Like, this scenario doesn't include, any spending on the capital improvement plan or desired projects. This just shows if you kept everything the same, what impact this would have, just to give you kind of an apples-to-apples comparison.
so I'm curious if it hypothetically would grow to those levels, going from 4.5 to 12.4 is a big leap. Could there be some place in the middle potentially for that, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's all, I think if that was something that council wanted to consider, then you might, well, there's a couple of things that I would think would happen, right? One, subject to negotiations with South Arc, right? Maybe South Arc, they have to figure out some other operating revenue coming in here. Maybe the city gives some sort of subsidy, or maybe, you have to trim the budget a little bit. Again, these are all
Yeah.
just food for thought hypotheticals. There might be some overlap between, South Arc's expenses versus the fire department's expenses. And all of these details, I think, would get ironed out and really refined in
Okay.
further analysis.
Thank you.
Melissa, the 48 cents sales tax, 48 cents on what amount of money?
So it'd be an additional 48 cents. So if the city's sales tax is 3.5%, then it would rise to just under 4%.
It's a percentage.
Yeah.
increase.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
a
the 48
percentage.
cents makes 0 sense to me.
Yeah.
Never
It's a percentage, correct. So your sales tax would increase to just under 4%.
Okay.
Hi, Melissa. I'm curious as to why the sales tax increase was looked into as opposed to the property tax, because we don't have the
Yeah,
property
so we
tax.
actually, so in the financial model I built out, it calculates both ways. I included for council the sales tax increase because that's most common across Colorado. It's not, I mean, you could look at doing a property tax if you wanted. It certainly is a far more stable revenue source. It's just across Colorado, typically how the revenues work out, the counties take the property tax and the cities and towns take the sales tax. That's the only reason why I put that in there.
Thank you.
And I would imagine it's somewhat unusual to have a municipality without a property tax. Probably a lot of the other ones with, across the state already have that in place, which could conceivably be why the sales tax.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really depends. Some municipalities do have it. I mean, obviously Denver, but Denver's also a county.
Yeah.
I think Aurora also charges a small property tax. So it's not unheard of.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Any other questions? Or, no?
I do, and I don't know if it's for Amy or for yourself. How often do we, because I see this as a tool that we can use, that you're bringing to us, that Amy can use, all of us. How often do we get presented with this? Every year, or is this the first year, or?
I think it needs to be updated every year.
I do too.
And more, we can re-explore it whenever we have big decisions, financial decisions to make.
Right, because it says
And-
it's a tool.
Yeah, the tool she's given us is very flexible and helpful. And her Excel spreadsheets are better than mine, so she might have a little bit of teaching to do.
I'm not saying that.
And I thought mine were awesome.
The idea is that this allows council to see the financial impact of the decisions that you're making. So with most of my clients, when they utilize something like this, it is updated annually, or when you have a major financial decision, which may not happen annually, right? Like maybe there's something that happens during the year. But that is the idea. Typically, this gets updated during the budget process. As you start thinking about what you're going to do next year, well then, okay, the decisions we're making for this upcoming budget, how does that impact us in the long run?
Well, and going along with that, it feels like I wish we could have used this tool a little sooner this year than using it right before we're adopting a budget. It seems like we could use this, and I know this is new.
We
This
were
tool.
using our old financial management plan tool
Mm-hmm.
and, staying within the boundaries of that,
Mm-hmm.
which we're starting out at the same place as that old
Yeah.
tool. We're just changing I think our projections are more conservative.
Yeah, the projections are a lot more conservative. In this case, like we haven't assumed additional new growth, meaning a significant amount of development. This is really just based off of the city's current tax base. But in the tool, there is a way for the city to calculate and determine what that new growth would bring to the city or how much that would cost. So for example, if you had, just throwing out stuff, like if you had a brand new department store that was coming on downtown and you wanted to know, okay, how much sales tax would that increase or how much might that add to my property tax base, then, there's a place now where you can calculate that. For these projections though, typically communities like to be conservative. You don't want to get out over your skis. And so that's why we have not included new growth. And our assumptions with all of these tools are fairly conservative. And I would also add that this is a snapshot in time, right? Like this is not what's absolutely going to happen. There's a number of unknowns and possible black swan events. This is simply to show council what your financial decisions, how that will impact things going forward. And then, also sound the alarm if there's something that needs to be right-sized.
I think that's what it's most helpful with. It just gives us confirmation to what we've been talking about, that we're heading towards tighter times.
Yeah.
We had to catch up with a lot of projects the last 5 years, and we did increase our spending intentionally because we were behind. But revenue flattened about the same time, especially with the salaries. That's an ongoing expense, so you have to be somewhat careful with that.
Yep.
My question is just about the fire protection district. So right now, what we find ourselves in is that Salida is paying the cost of fire protection, but that isn't the service area, doesn't encompass the whole service area. So we have a whole other community that doesn't pay a dime.
Yeah.
We have areas of the county that are serviced, that don't pay a dime. So how does that work? How do we include the service area as being the district? How do we include that into rope all those people into that vote so that it isn't just a burden borne solely on us?
Yeah. So something like that, if they're not currently within, well, it would have to go to a vote of people, right? Because you'd be looking to impose a property tax or some other tax onto them. And so under Tabor, it would have to get voter approved. And then things like that, they're generally subject to negotiation on how much each individual community would be willing to pay. Maybe, we looked at it as a broad brushstroke across the board. What would be that mill levy? What would that look like? And then maybe it's not a uniform mill levy, maybe, or maybe there's some sort of subsidy that comes into it. These are all considerations, and I think avenues that council could explore further if this is a scenario you really want to dig into.
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to visualize like jigsawing this.
Yeah.
Even just defining what that service area is.
Right.
And
Right,
that's
so
our
in terms,
opportunity to-
yeah, so in terms of this analysis, when I mentioned like the 12.4 mils, the tax base we looked at was the school district's tax base.
Okay.
You know, so whether that's bigger or smaller, you know,
No,
I don't
that's-
know.
That makes sense, because it's not like the other community has a school, so that
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
makes sense. Okay. Thank you.
Melissa, I don't know if you know this, but where are we at compared to Colorado as far as, in the county, 80% of our homes are owned by people who don't live here, don't vote here, don't spend a cent on sales tax. And so we're in an upside-down model where we clearly need property tax so that people who are absorbing all the housing and keeping it away from our workers are paying in to help our systems. Is it upside down like this throughout Colorado?
In the mountain communities, yes. 100%, yeah. And it's something that I think a lot of communities have struggled with, especially with affordable or attainable housing. You know, it is something that I think everybody is starting to pay a lot more attention to. Workforce housing has started to be the buzzword, and by workforce, I mean creating a place for teachers or first responders to live in. And so what we find is like the local school district is the one that is building these apartment or single-family homes. You know, these are generally speaking policy decisions for your individual community and what ultimately you want to do. I know at the state level, there has been talk in the past about creating a separate assessment rate for residential but second homeowner owned, really kind of targeting what you're talking about. And that was largely failed. It failed miserably in this last property tax reform cycle. So maybe it's something that pops up again. Unfortunately, at the local level, you don't really have that much flexibility in what you do on that side. What I've seen other communities do is kind of what Salida has with a short-term occupancy tax, things like that. But it's you kind of need the state to help you a little bit, you know, with what you want. And then other than that, you know, you're really limited to whatever local tools you have, like a short-term occupancy tax.
Thank you.
Well, we've got a lot to sort of digest with this. Is there anything else? No? Okay.
Thank you so much.
We
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
thank you for having me.
Melissa, thanks very much. You might want to stay to hear about the soaking pools. See if
Or just the whole meeting.
Thanks for coming up here.
It's the best.
Thank you.
Well, hate to be the next person in line here after that.
I wouldn't ask for money.
Yeah, no, and I think just some probably really quick staff reflection. We were alerted to this a while ago, and so the budget that's been presented to you for next year is really as bare bones as I've seen it since I've been here. We have no scout waves, no playgrounds, no skate parks, no capital. So, and the reality that Melissa just presented is that is the foreseeable future. There's no fixing. You can't fix a bathroom for $300,000. Like there's really nothing for that. So, as doom and gloom as it seems, it's becoming more and more. I mean, it's becoming a reality that we are all kind of sit with right now. So, with that. We thought it would be a good idea to bring the soaking pools back as an update. The community's asking. I know that some of you have been asking. And what I have up here right now is the evolution of the soaking pools over the past year. So that very first number, that 714,000 on the top left, that was the number that I received. I was actually, I think, with the mayor at the time, doing my first round of budget talks. And I left that meeting, went up to my office and had that email in my inbox. So this was, we had bids at 1.6 and $2.8 million. And I received an email with a bid for $714,000. I came back, We quickly pivoted and put the $900,000 in the budget, thinking that we could kind of finish everything off with that extra, $185,000. And what you're looking at is kind of the evolution of the year. So the original is pretty straightforward. That was kind of the original budget as we finally got the numbers down and figured out what the bid was specifically for and what it was missing. And then the VE is a value engineer, where we went through after we had our original numbers and how can we bring these numbers down. And then the other one's a date, because we hadn't been hearing back from our contractors and our subcontractors. So I just put another, okay, here's where we stand right now. At that point, we decided to see what it would look like if we took a pool out and did 4 instead of 5 pools. And then that August 24 number, that's the most recent bid, the one that was, probably the nail in the coffin. And it's the bottom right number. If you go all the way to the bottom of the spreadsheet, not all the way at the bottom, I'm sorry, in the expenses, but the electricity for the pump house, we had a placeholder of about $25,000, thinking that it was running a line from the pool to the pump house. All the other wiring and electrical was done by the pool contractor. Finally got numbers back from a local electrician, and they had it at $207,000. So that was pretty much a, bummer. So I did talk to the contractor. He said there are a lot of things, there are a lot of unknowns in the market right now. And one of the things that he recommended was, or pointed out, was that it kind of surprised me. He said, your plan set is 5 years old, which is old in his line of work. Right. So he said that specifically because the code had changed in the past year, that changed things enough that there were a lot of uncertainties. So he needed to pad the budget pretty hard. So with that, I can answer any questions that you guys have about the hard numbers and the cooling tower going from 113 down to 59. We thought we had a solution. Turns out we didn't. We had to go back to the old product. So there was back and forth, and between Dave Daly, Nate Moorman, myself, the contractors we were working with, there's been an extensive amount of back and forth, and we're feeling pretty confident. The number that I have not been able to get a firm number on that you see has remained the same the entire time is the plumbing to the pump house. And that is for fresh water and gas, for a gas heater inside the pump house. So I have not had anyone get back to me in the past year. I'd say more accurately in the past 9 months since I've been asking for that exact number. And I think with that, Jess Downing is here. Jess is the chairperson of the Prost. I think she has a little bit of reflection to do on the project. But again, before that, if you guys have questions, I'm here to answer them.
Yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
So on the concrete deck general, that goes 25,000 original, and then the VE, and then it jumps to 257,000.
Mm-hmm.
What?
So in that 714,000 budget for the vessels and hardware, that included the pool vessel and the concrete down to the deck. And the original plan was that we would do sidewalks to each pool. And that plan was dropped to do an entire deck that was heated by the hot water, so that it melted. And we were going way down with where similar to, what's the new one up in BV? Charlotte Hot Springs, and just do some paths out to the pools. And that idea was struck down for a more elaborate,
Are these the pools themselves? Are they poured in place, like concrete poured in place, or was there any looking of bringing in set already off, set pools like?
Yeah, and so I think this is really the question that we're getting to for direction. We can go back to square one and try to figure something else out. I've been proceeding like a bull over the past 4 years on one plan set. Despite opinions from the community, I was going ahead on what council had directed me to do when I first got the job. Build these soaking pools. The plan set was handed to me. And so that's what I have been doing. I am now here asking, do you want me to continue to do this? Do you want me to try to re-strategize? Looking for some advice. And I think the what's that? I'll answer Aaron's question. Did you have another one? Sorry.
No, I was going to just comment what you said on maybe, you know, at this time, it might be a good time to kind of fall back and re-strategize a little bit maybe and kind of come up with some new plans. I know when the original plans came to you, I think the city was sitting in a little bit better place and had a little more idea of maybe being able to make this happen. But I think right now it would be kind of a good time to go back and maybe start from the beginning. I know it's a lot of work, but to see them come to, you know, I think a lot of people would like to see them happen. So, but
I think that's a great
So I want
segue for
to have
Jessica.
Jessica, and then, because I know you have a presentation to give, then we can come back to this. and-
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Oh,
I have notes.
She has thoughts.
I just have thoughts. Yeah, I've just been basically reiterating on the behalf of the Pros Board and the community that the soaking pools are very important and they have been top of the priority. We were looking back, we have plans from 2012 of soaking pools. They've changed a lot. There's now pickleball courts of where those soaking pools were going to be, but the soaking pools have always been a part of the pool since 2012. And these priorities have not shifted from the community or now the Pros Board, which used to be the rec board, which was then probably just Teresa. But and we understand that money's tight, and as Amy was joking earlier, find cheap money, which is grants and other funding, but grantors love seeing shovel-ready projects. And as Diesel just said, the plans are no longer relevant. We've had a lot of input from the Salida Swim and Soak community of, hey, let's think bigger picture. Let's plan for maybe somewhere down the road we get an outdoor pool in, and the plan. Let's make some plans that have soaking pools and an outdoor pool, and can do this in phases eventually. Yeah, let's look at some different ways to make the pools. And so I think I appreciate, Aaron, your jump in on that of like, hey, maybe it's time to start from ground zero. And so what, on behalf of the swimming community, I guess, asking for a consideration of redoing these plans and doing a feasibility study. Melissa specifically pointed that out in her presentation, that the pools could use a new feasibility study. That would be, we actually have, the Salida Swim and Soak actually has a, do you have, oh, there you are. Has a vendor lined up that could do a feasibility study. They're ready to go. We just have to tell them when. We actually put out a RFP in the last couple of months looking for some bids on that. And so we want to make sure that this project, even though we know soaking pools won't get built tomorrow or next year, maybe even the next year, but that it does not lose momentum, and getting a feasibility study and getting these plans updated to something that is expandable, relevant, and still fits with our community's needs is top priority. Thank you.
thank you.
Any questions?
Well, I can only imagine how frustrating, I mean, you put all this work in. I mean, it's frustrating for us sitting up here, and we haven't been in the trenches with you doing this. And, I mean, the timing is just so challenging right now, especially after what we've just heard. In fact, I'm going to crank my belt down a couple notches here.
No, I've said it before, and I will probably now say it for the rest of my career. When I advised you not to enter into the contract in my first council meeting in this position, I regret saying that. Had we gone with it, we would have been done. They would have been built. We would have been making money. We would have made the money over COVID that we made. We wouldn't have even blinked about it. But here we are again. The white whale is still swimming. So.
Who else?
So I understand your time is also changed into money if you've spent that much time on this. And that's a lot of time and that's a lot of money and investment in it that we have in this. So who pays for the feasibility study?
So right now, Salida Swim and Soak has some funds set aside. I think it's $10,000. That's gone now.
Lower?
Oh. Yeah, do you mind coming up, though? Just, yeah.
It's not enough for the entire study. We do not have any money in the 2025 budget for a feasibility study. I would have to look at Amy for a very creative solution to either motivate very fast
You
with.
have put money, you have not adopted the budget, or, we have just $100,000 in contingency reserves for things that come up. We haven't even adopted the budget. I hate to say that, let's already spend that, but,
Yeah.
we have, how much would it be?
My guess would be 15,000 for the study and potentially 5,000 to update the existing plans to the new code. But that's the existing plans.
And how much do you have?
Salida Surf and Swim.
Sorry.
We have a personal donor who is willing to give 50,000 toward the project, but only in the build stage. That donor right now is adamant that the city has buy-in, and the buy-in would be for the study. We've been told that most of these studies are 40 to 60,000, and we are able, because we've done so much legwork, and there are prior studies that have been done that we can piggyback on that already talk about how many gallons per minute. All that data is already collected from the 2012 study that was done. So this would be an add-on to that, and it would be 12,000. But we've been told by the company that you guys keep on retainer, Seacrest, is that, what's their name?
Barker Rinker CCAD is a subcontractor.
Yes. Barker Rinker. Right now, people from that company have told us that we would be lucky to pay 45 to 50. And the company that we're working with has said, because we've done so much work, that they would do it for 12. But our donor is like, the city has to have buy-in because we've been through this so many times. And that's where the rub is. But they're ready to go. We have a contract ready to go. They did put the RFP out. We're looking at other avenues, maybe building one large soaking pool instead of 5 small ones. That might be cheaper without having as much electrical or plumbing. I mean, we're open to whatever, but that's where we stand right now.
Thanks, Wendy.
Mayor?
Yeah. Yes. Oh, I said, where's the voice? Where is that disembodied voice coming from?
Dominique would like to speak on this.
Oh, yeah. Dominique?
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
She sent me a
Great. So I know Jess said that funders in the form of grants like shovel-ready projects, but there are also so many grants that are designated as planning grants. And so Wendy, you don't have to answer this, but I'm just wondering if that counts. We don't have it budgeted from what I understand. So can the direction be to just look for planning grants to go through that feasibility study process? And how could the partnership with Salida Swim and Soak with the nonprofit status, if we can't find a grant that will work through our government channels, could we potentially go through that nonprofit channel? Thank you.
Thank you.
Who's up?
I have something else.
Do we have I think she's looking for a little.
I was just going to reply, Dominique, that last question you had, that is why Salida Swim and Soak is under SPOT. So it can indeed operate as a nonprofit to get those grants.
Okay.
And I guess maybe the details of where Salida Swim and Soak sits maybe are not clear in my mind, you guys did ask them as a formal subcommittee, task force of the PROST. They could also function under SPOT in this case for that purpose.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Sorry, go ahead. You.
Oh, that's okay. That's what I was going to ask. Does it qualify for the stuff that Dominique is asking about? Do we, the nonprofit and all of that stuff? I think that's what she's saying is direction to that. Do we qualify for this stuff? And if not, it's $400,000 over budget. That would have been recommended for the 900,000.
Of which I believe that 900,000, as we were progressing down this path, it's pretty much being used to balance the 2024 budget right now. So it's not like we have 900,000 that we're kind of waiting for and we just need that last 400,000. It's more like the 900,000 started getting hacked at to balance this year's budget.
I wonder,
That's not necessarily true. We just-
Sorry, maybe hacked is a bad word,
It's
right, right.
just, you know, when I projected.
this is what happens
I like
when Parks
visuals,
and
in
Rec
case you
talks
haven't-
about the budget.
All of our projections do not include us spending the funds for that. You know, we learn that there is potential that could make money. But I think that the next step is to determine through a feasibility study, a well-done feasibility study, if there is interest in the community, enough interest to support that, if people will really use it the way we hope they will.
Would it make sense then to explore the option of the grant for a feasibility study? And if we can find something, I mean, after hearing the presentation we just heard and the budget where it is, I've got my fiduciary responsibility cap on.
Yeah,
I had it on
we can
before, but it's
certainly.
on even more
You
tightly
always
now.
have it on, it's good.
We can do that. And I guess, Suzanne, I stumbled over answering that question because it depends on which grant we're pursuing. There are planning grants, yes. There are GOCO grants where you have to be a municipality to apply, but then there are other grants that you have to be a nonprofit to apply. So it's really going to depend. And this is a job. There are people out there that go, find grants. We can start doing that. They come across every once in a while, and we've talked about whether or not it could be an EPA grant because the pool currently, the water is still warm when it goes into the river. We have not been required to change that at this point, but maybe we pursue grants. These pools could be cooling pools. So we can start exploring. Yeah, that's. I'm welcome to roll up plans and put them away for a while. Or not welcome to. I'm willing to.
My ideas about, like, if we roll up the plans, so is it Wendy, correct? Wendy, you mentioned that the feasibility study that we already have is for the plans we already have. And
The feasibility study that we found from 2012, that was very extensive. It was a 58-page document that we found about 2 weeks ago. We didn't even know it existed.
yeah, Donna Rhodes sent it to me and
Yes, and that was a very good feasibility study done 12 years ago. And they compared us with Ouray and Steamboat, which are the other two cities which are running their pools. And they are running, at that point in 2012, they were running at 120% recovery. And both of those cities have expanded their pools dramatically since then because they're making so much money.
okay, so what I would,
But we can do a feasibility study for the 5 pools, or maybe try to make it for one large soaking pool, which might be cheaper for electrical, I don't know. But the people that.
We can start over. We're off microphone, sorry.
Yeah, and
It's-
they can't hear online.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reality is, yes, we do have a nice study from 2012. That was a lifetime ago. That doesn't apply. It's irrelevant to what we're doing now. It has great data. It compared at the time, but now, we do have a market analysis from 2019. That again was kind of a lifetime ago in this community. So, yeah, we're kind of at square one.
Okay, so like, what I was asking was that, so you said it was $12,000 to, you said someone is proposing $12,000 for a feasibility study. I'm wondering if that is, if it's with the current plans, they could do that, or would it could we have like new plans and it still be the $12,000?
I can dig more into it. The scope that I saw was not, I did not feel like it was sufficient for what we were trying to do. The scope, it was also tied in a little bit with adding this outdoor community pool. And at the time, again, I was pushing for the 5 soaking pools. So I put out the exact scope that the Salida Swim and Soak used to get that $12,000 quote to 2 other companies. Didn't hear back from one, heard back from another, but have never gotten firm numbers. So I can dig deeper and see if that scope the scope of their feasibility study would get the information that I feel like you guys are looking for. Both a 5 pool. What if we went back to square one? What if we did 5 pools and an outdoor community pool? I mean, that's a pretty big scope for feasibility. But somebody can do it, and this is just the next thing. I mean, I heard the presentation too, so I get it.
I just feel like a feasibility scope from 2012 is not going to stand up to today's, right?
You need to be on microphone.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah.
and I think we need to give some direction here. I mean, there's
Do you want to scroll, Chris?
keep going.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get
Yeah.
some direction.
So this is what, when I was writing this, these were the kind of 4 angles that I saw. Would you like me to continue to engage with contractors to build the soaking pools? Do you want me to explore other funding options, explore more feasibility with the outdoor pool task force, or develop another plan for the hot springs water entirely?
I mean, my
Or
thought
combination.
would be, I don't want to send you down more rabbit holes, and I know they weren't intended to be rabbit holes, but with everything that's changed, of those, if there was a way, maybe we could get some grant funding to get feasibility done, because all the other ones just seem like we're getting in front of our skis too much at this point, given everything we've heard about the budget.
And I kind of wish this update had included the original, like, I mean, in my tenure, we've been down this road. It's like, it feels like Groundhog Day, because it's the same thing that happened where we were like, wow, it could be for this much. And then it ended up being way more than that every time. So I think that there is that buy-in already. We did buy in, we bought it, we were full steam ahead on plans already. And then that fell through in the same way that this did. So I feel like that would have been a clear way of like really showing like we are already, this ball has already started rolling. I mean, we have been pushing it. We are already putting money in, I already have been, for plans. So yeah, anything that would be grant funded makes sense to me.
I think the last 3 of the requests down there, the explore other funding options, explore more feasibility with the outdoor pool task force, and developing another plan for the hot springs water, all things that need to be moving forward on now. I don't think we need to really get in contact with contractors to build the soaking pool yet, because I think those other steps need to continue forward. Like I would say, and then maybe work with this private investor. You said you guys had a private investor up to 50,000. That just needs to see more skin in the game, I guess, from the city to during, and then doesn't come until the building process starts. So if we could talk to him and maybe try and figure out, more new paths through that, or is that's pretty, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I would agree. We've already invested thousands of dollars in this process. We're bought in.
Yeah, I feel like
But we'll keep working on it.
just break ground.
But personally, I'm ready to buy out.
Right.
Because we have wasted so much money on plans that you say are stale. You know, and I feel like if we start over again, we're just throwing good money after bad. I'm over it. The most I would go for at all is a feasibility study. I would never go for new plans. I'd go for $5,000 adjusted plans. You know, but that's it. I'm done with this because we can't do it. We missed our opportunity.
Okay, and then did you?
I'm with Councilwoman Pappenford, and that we can't keep throwing money after it if we're not gonna act on it. If we're gonna move forward with the feasibility study, let's do that. And at that point, you say, we're in or we're out. We can't just keep chasing labor after it or plans after it and then never step forward and do it. Because at this point, from the 900,000, I don't remember when that was in the budget, to the almost $4 million is a huge difference. Yeah, that's big.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I know you expressed, you were like regretful, I guess, about your decision from a few years ago. And I just want to say that you, in that moment, were making the best decision that you could see. And I don't want you to hold that over yourself.
Thank you.
That's all.
Yeah.
So thank you for still
For all the
continuing with
work.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't lose sleep over it, or.
Mayor, Dominique would like to speak again.
Dominique?
Just, yeah, I would love to see this move forward, but I think unless the right grant comes along, and that is a planning grant that the city can take advantage of as a government entity, or in partnership with a nonprofit. If the right grant comes along, I'd like to see a full feasibility study, and otherwise, then the project goes into dormancy until that grant comes along.
I think that provides some pretty clear direction.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
And once again, I really appreciate all the work that Prost, that the pool committee, and I know this has got to be really frustrating, and it's frustrating for us too. So, thanks for all the work.
Thank you for being here. I'm going to stay for the Tenderfoot
Okay,
topic.
which is not aquatic related, the Tenderfoot thing.
No, not yet. Actually, we're going to reactivate Tenderfoot and have an active volcano mountain bike trail that'll end in hot springs.
I thought it was going to be a water slide.
That's my next plan. It's going to be awesome.
Russell's already created the poster for it.
Yeah, I do. I did an AI poster for this
An
project.
alpine slide on it or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, a slide would be pretty cool too.
Alpine slide can make money, that thing's.
Slide right through the Christmas tree.
Yeah.
Around it. I think Christy's going to lead this, or do you want me to lead, Christy?
If you can hear me, I will start the conversation, but thank you for staying up there.
Yeah.
So greetings from not council chambers this evening. It is so much fun to do these online. I hope to never schedule it like this again. So the council has asked for some information regarding Spiral Drive and its status as to being opened or closed. So staff wanted to give you kind of an overview of Tenderfoot Mountain and some of the issues that we've been seeing up there. We absolutely understand that taking a drive up Spiral Drive in the summer with your family is a really cool experience. A lot of us have done it and have some great pictures to show for it. And I know that a lot of people in our community have really missed that opportunity to drive up to Spiral, drive up to the top and take a look at the valley below. We, starting last year, and Diesel and David will both need to, if David's in the room, need to share some of the history a little bit of why the gate was closed. If you could actually go to the presentation, Christy, we can show a little bit here. So the first page, just to go back one. Awesome, thank you. So Spiral Drive here, Tenderfoot Mountain, located north of the city of Salida across the Arkansas River. You can see that there's a lot of use that takes place on Tenderfoot. There are a number of trails. There's the lovely spiral drive there. The S of S Mountain is located on Tenderfoot, turns into a heart. We also have a lovely Christmas tree there at Christmas time. This is an old photo because it does not show the tower that's located on top of Tenderfoot Mountain currently, that houses 2 different broadband providers, a cell phone provider, and our community radio station. So staff wanted to give you just a little bit of an overview of all of the things that we have going on Tenderfoot Mountain. Obviously, the only thing that you have asked for us to provide for you and to get direction from you is whether or not to open the road, but your staff loves to go above and beyond. Christy, if we can go down to the next slide, that would be awesome. So you can see here the current road conditions. Now, this is the same road that's been up there probably since they created the road. It's a pretty narrow road. It's windy. There's some low-hanging obstacles across the road that you can see in that left side photo there as well. You can see that it is difficult, or there isn't a lot of room for vehicles to pass each other. If you recall from the top page, or if you've ever been up there, Spiral Drive does not go all the way around Tenderfoot Mountain. There's a point at the top where you're required to back down from the top until you get to a place where you can turn your car around. So this is the road, the current road conditions up there. Next slide. As I mentioned, there the S Mountain is, or the S is up there, the heart, the tree. We have the towers up there that all require electric service. So this is some of the electric work that's up there. It is not in great shape. Some of it's exposed. We spend some time up there trying to ensure that it's safe for people who are walking, driving, riding their bicycles up there. Next slide. More of the electric that goes into lighting of the Christmas tree, actually. Next slide. We have fiber that is run up to the top as well. And you can see that it's in this orange conduit here. We do have Verizon and Visionary who are going to be working on correcting some of this fiber that's not properly buried. Next. And if you are familiar, there's a little white house at the top of Tenderfoot Mountain, and there are some concrete steps leading up to it. These steps go directly into the house, as well as off to the side. They go to the tower and a utility shed that's located up there for the broadband providers. These steps haven't been dealt with in quite a while. We did have, I think, $75,000 in the budget for 2025, but it was removed because we have a number of competing priorities. And the next slide, not sure. Okay, sorry. Thanks. So staff really is looking for council's direction on what you would like to see with Spiral Drive and having it available to the public. There is a gate located about a quarter of the way up that has an arm on it that has been locked. It's generally unlocked. It had been unlocked by Public Works in the morning and then locked in the evening by the Salida Police Department. Last year, I think I'll have to ask somebody else to remind us of, when we stopped unlocking the gate and opening it up. I don't really recall when that happened. Diesel, are you ready to take on?
It was the summer of 2023 was the first summer that we had any kind of prolonged closure. And it coincided with a couple of things. There was a project up there that we closed it for, and police simultaneously, the police department said, well, let's just not reopen it. We have to go up there and close it every night. We can't get to it most nights, or I don't think it's most nights, but they can't get to it some nights. So we kind of ran an experiment and left it closed. See if anybody would say anything. See who, like they say, if you want to know who's getting into your closet, lock it, change the lock, and all of a sudden you'll know everybody who's trying to get into the Fibbark Boathouse basement or whatever it might be. We observed, it was a Parks and Recreation, Public Works and Police Department discussion. And now we're bringing it back. We have got many issues that all kind of coincide or are coinciding and coalescing. This is also the last year that the current volunteer force doing Christmas Mountain will be doing Christmas Mountain. They're done as of January 1st, which means we don't have volunteers to remove Christmas Mountain. And therefore we've gotten bids to have a professional service do it, but there are options there. I'm sure if we did a call for volunteers, we'd get some. It's just a lot of work, a lot of retraining. The reason the volunteers are no longer going to continue is because it's hard work. And, Jerry McCabe is 2 new knees and he doesn't want to do it anymore. And it's hard work. It's not, I mean, as you saw by the pictures, it's very rugged up there.
We've all seen the hill climb.
And there's the hill climb, there's, number of factors up there. We have various options for opening the road. The road was maintained. We have one grader specifically that fits on the road. It was operated by Kevin Nelson. So that hasn't been operated in a while. Their staff's main concern from my communications with the chief and David Lady today is the workload that it takes to open and close it. And that's predominantly it. If we kept the road the way that it is and decided to, at your own risk kind of thing, if our risk tolerance was high enough to just allow people up there, and the electricity we were okay with, and we said, nope, we know, and we're okay with it that way. And the concrete, we recognize and we say, we're okay with that too. You can run up and down it all you want. The main concern is the time and resources that it's gonna take to open and close the gate. So there were options for solar powered gates. That in itself is, I know how often the gate at the multi-use facility breaks, and how many people have to be called to fix it. So pros, cons. Question. Christy, did you have more that you wanted to add?
No, thank you.
Who wants to begin this discussion? Either questions or thoughts, either one.
If we were to leave the tree up all year long, is that doable?
That's our strategy at this point.
Yeah, right, so.
There are a couple things, there are a couple ornaments that I think have honest to goodness like tinsel on them that we'll probably want to take down.
Tinsel?
You'd
see that?
The real fear from those who are most invested in Christmas Mountain is that the sunlight will dull the bulbs over time. And the green will not be as green.
But how not green are we talking here,
I don't have my palette on me, but I would add a little sage.
It just turns to gray in 2 years, or?
No, the current green is relatively new. I think it's 2 years old. You guys may remember, it was fading. I mean, it was starting to look like, it's not like it fades either. The plastic degrades to a point where it just gets clear again.
Oh, okay.
And all of a sudden you're just you'd look up there and you'd be like, it's looking just white. And so got some new green and, you can go up there. I have personally replaced all of the lights, not all of them, my kids helped me, but the heart You know, I've redone the heart. It takes a long time. It's not easy.
Child labor law violation.
Well, it was, hey, COVID, man, everything was out the window. My kids we made the heart purple and you couldn't tell the difference. So red and purple are very similar from that distance. Yeah, that is the strategy right now.
Okay, so I had sent an email to Christy and yourself and to Mayor Shore earlier with some thoughts on the road opening and closing. I understand that it would take staff hours to do that. 20 minutes, maybe round trip in the morning to open that. The police are on duty. They could close it as your suggestion. But it would also be seasonal. It would not be, where we have to plow it. So you close it in the fall after, when the season's starting to change, or as you're preparing for S Mountain to be lit up, the Christmas tree. And then you keep it closed all winter long, and then as the spring comes, you do it again. So it would be seasonal labor. It wouldn't be every single day. And if you put that into your budget as part of their duties, one staff member on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or whatever it is, then it's very doable as a seasonal closure and being open to vehicular traffic. I think there's a lot of people in the community that know that it's open to hikers and bikers. And that's great if you're a hiker or a biker. But if you're not able to use that, something in our community that is right here. So I feel like it should be accessible to everyone. There's a road there. It has always been narrow. That hasn't changed. There's been concrete there, and that hasn't changed. And it has been in the state that it's in for a very long time. And it has not been a problem at this point. I'm not trying to say keep using it until it's a problem. I'm not trying to say that. And I know there's no budget for. Welcome to Menard. There's no budget for improvements at this point to the concrete and such, especially $75,000 or whatever the number would be. But for having a staff member open it in the mornings seasonally and a staff member close it in the evenings seasonally, I think is an acceptable request from our community.
And, related to that, one of the challenges that we face as a community is we're changing and growing so much. And when that happens, traditions become more and more important. And there are a lot of people that's been a tradition in their families for a really long time. And a lot of these people, have reached an age where being able to walk up there or get on a bike is no longer even an option. And I feel like if we can work with those folks and show them that we recognize how important this tradition is, if we can make it work, we should try to make it work. Because there are definitely some equity issues. I mean, I think about what we've heard from members of our disabled community about when F Street was closed, and we went to great lengths last year to try to make it more equitable. It sort of feels like up there's also some equity issues. So, and maybe, we play around with this idea of, how many months of the year. I mean, I talked to someone today who was like, God, if it was open, say from beginning of May to the end of October, which would be half the year, and maybe we could play around a little with that and run it from like mid-May to mid-October, because I don't know, you necessarily want people driving up there on Halloween.
No.
Yeah, and causing mischief. But I don't know, I mean, it's just.
Yep, and I will just, speaking for my peers.
Yeah.
Again, they are very concerned, this will be the last time I say it, about the staff time.
Yeah, I know.
So
I know.
I've said what I needed to say on their behalf. And to be honest, there were comments like Parks and Rec has seasonal employees that make $18 an hour. What about them? Instead of our employees making $40 an hour? I mean, this is when we start getting into the meat, like the real details of it, like, sure, but again, there's no budget. Like it would take I mean, a seasonal position, we'd get a lot more out of them, but, I mean, we close the bathrooms at 4. I mean, we could get creative, but want to hear more thoughts.
I just wanted to say, I think the most important photo on the presentation is what it looks like out of the hood of, like, over the hood of your car when another car is coming down. So yeah, the road hasn't changed, the mountain hasn't changed, but the size of cars has changed. A truck built this year could eat a truck from the 80s. Like, you could put it into the flatbed of a truck now. Like, they make them huge.
We're not driving Model Ts up there anymore.
Right. Like, if we want to do tradition, then it would have to be out of the traditional, the vehicle, which I would think would probably be a Model T or something like that. But that's the thing is, like, we built this really beautiful park at the parking lot with like a key informational kiosk. It's like, it's pretty nice there. I mean, you know, it's not the top of Tenderfoot by any means, but it's still a great view. I feel like that's, you know, at the end of the day, I mean, we built that up to be so nice and welcoming and inviting as a place to park. And I've just, over the years, seeing what it looks like when there's traffic up there, and it's sketchy. Seeing cars trying to maneuver around each other, going in different directions up there is, you know, I recommend it. It's a wild experience. That's kind of why I'm leaning towards just keeping it closed.
Yeah,
As
me
opposed
too.
to other reasons.
Me too. I'm leaning toward keeping it closed. We need to invest a lot of money to get that safe. I wouldn't want a toddler up there and playing around with that electrical system. And I use that term loosely. You know, it just doesn't look safe. And it's a good point that the Chipeta Park is there. People can go there. And I know that, you know, we'd love to be all things to all people, but we don't have the money. We just don't.
How do other people feel?
I was originally thinking just with the conditions of it, I wasn't super comfortable with having traffic up there again. But Councilmember Fontana brought up a really good point, and Diesel, something that you said about how, so correct me if I'm wrong, but it was you and the police chief and maybe David Lady who closed it. And I think that knowing that it's a really important tradition to our community, the idea of it being half of the year, not the full year, sounds like something that is, like, we're negotiating as well. We didn't ask the community how they felt about it being closed, and it just was done. It was brought up by a community member to have it open again. I believe having it half the year, as Councilmember Fontana suggested, is something that I am behind.
And just for clarity, I can go back and look at each year, but I don't even think, even when it was open, it was never open the whole year.
Right.
It was closed seasonally, and I'm not even sure that it was open for half the year. It may have only been like
Summer.
like Labor Day, Memorial Day thing. Like, does anyone remember this?
No, I remember Kevin doing a bunch of maintenance up there and the grader and doing some plow work up there. So I thought it was open more than it seasonally.
I
Before.
was talking to someone who's been here a long time today. He had told me that people did not go up there when the snow was falling.
Was it locked or they just didn't go?
They just didn't go.
They just didn't go?
Yeah.
It was open.
It was open, but they
Yeah.
just didn't go.
You could go up there at any time you wanted to, just at your own,
Right.
you know,
Yeah, because that
risk.
gate wasn't always there.
No, so it
Good
was
point.
just seasonal. I mean, they just chose not to go. It was open. So I think even seasonally, like we're talking about, make it a shorter season, put it in the summer. Do it something like that so that people still have access to something that's in our community that's right here.
Dominique, did you have anything you wanted to weigh in on this one?
Yes, I mean, it's really tough to figure out what to do because roads take maintenance, you know, if cars are driving on them. So it's up to the city to come up with the funding for that maintenance. And I just wonder if there's an opportunity there to either hear from the community that wants to access it as far as partnership opportunities, again, for grants or volunteer work, or, you know, so that it's not just up to the city to maintain this road on a mountain, so that, and, you know, it's not hiking. If you want to walk up the road, you can just walk. It's a flat surface. So I just wonder if there's a fee-based opportunity that could be a partnership to keep the road open, whether it be in-kind support to the city or monetary support.
So
And just trying to think about it creatively, because I'm like needing to see a third side here.
you raise a good point. I was talking to someone today who mentioned that he feels like a lot of some of the construction companies that have been here a really long time, I don't want to mention names because they were shared with me and I don't know if it was confidence or not, who might very be likely to be willing, because it has been such a community tradition, to provide or, you know, the concrete, you know, to help make some of the repairs potentially. That would all have to be fleshed out, but might be worth a conversation.
Again, I'm
And
sure that
if we could just generate the funding for the staff person to keep it open, sounds like that would solve it. So I'd love to see the community's creativity as how we could generate that funding. And if it means a fee to open the gate, that seems like a very simple solution.
So I'd say we've kind of really brought two issues, and within some subsets, kind of daily management issue, like how are we going to manage the road, and then a capital and improvement projects issues between the lights, the concrete, the road itself. Like the request for direction, we just want to know if you want us to open it or not. We have explained existing conditions, showed you pictures, you know, we'll take you up there if you want to go, but we will take direction. We're your staff. So I guess there are a couple things that I don't see addressed in Christie's memo. We have, if you want it open to vehicular traffic, she's starting to get into some of the creative ways here. Is there a certain time of day, days of the week, special occasions that you would prefer? I'm kind of, at this point, I am hearing seasonally every day for the half of the year. I do know that will be a burden that we can address with additional staff or funds or whatever it is. And then this next question, should vehicle size be limited due to the nature of the road? And that could be a sign that we put up, no 15 passenger vans, whatever it might be.
I think that's fair and reasonable.
About only 15 passenger vans.
Yeah.
Driven by you.
Driven by a tour
A
guide.
council member of
Well,
your choosing.
that was an idea.
Paid for
It's a
and goes
recreational opportunity.
to Salida.
We could solve this all again with a gondola. I don't know.
Labor
I'll throw people
Day
in the
to
back of my
Memorial
dump
Day.
truck.
You know, you could do Labor Day to Memorial Day.
Tow road.
Day to Labor Day.
That's what I meant. I meant that was the opposite. Yes, you could do that time period, and then you could put a sign with the limit of the vehicle and maybe 8 to 5 or 9 to 6, or put, you know, I know there's some signage there already. But something that says these gates will be unlocked during these times, in this season.
Time, up and down.
And I'm hearing you say it would be helpful if it wasn't every day of a 6-month period. So if it was like Friday, Saturday, Sunday of a 6-month period, that would be an easier lift for staff to manage the gate.
Yes.
And certainly the vehicle size needs to be limited. Really, I thought that we should have a wild bus driver from one of the rafting companies just haul people up there, because then you get a thrill ride and the view.
And we really want to increase the call volume that we're getting on
Yeah,
our
no.
services too.
Exactly.
22-year-old
Solid
bus
opportunity.
driving, raft guiding, stick shift diesel, driving a old school bus with a 5 stack of trailers down the canyon is not who you want driving up there. Nor the person who can't necessarily walk or ride a bike up there. There's hence the conundrum. Like, that is tough. It'd be tough to claim it's for accessibility when I think at some points the grade is at such a point where it is hard to see over the hood of the car. You know, like where you're like, where is the edge? I think I hear direction. I don't think I need to come back with anything. It's pretty clear. Are we all good with us proceeding how we can? If there are snafus, we'll let you know.
Did we decide on the Christmas mountain?
Well, the plan right now is to leave the tree in place.
Okay.
Just remove the bulbs.
So do what you can do.
Yeah.
You've heard the ideas of what we would like.
And I could theoretically come back next year, depending on where we are in the budget, and ask for funds for concrete, ask for funds for staff, ask for funds for a contractor to do the lights, to do the road, who knows? But I'm hearing at this point, well, yeah, we are where we are. We'll do
We
what
could
can
also,
do.
during that time, reach out to some of these community members that have expressed certain things to us and get them involved.
Okay.
Just to confirm, sorry, since I am online, I want to make sure that I'm following the conversation. Opening it for part of the year, I did hear May 15th to October 15th. So does the council okay with us making sure that we have a plan together this winter and have something ready to go for next season?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I'd like to
Thank you.
even go off of what Dominique was saying about there are obviously stakeholders that want to have equity in this and see how they can get involved too. I think I think we're going to be doing that a lot, actually.
Rickshaw.
Almost exclusively. Yeah, right. Something.
Narrow gauge? Railroad up there?
Gondola.
You can have Aaron's the only one wearing a hat, he could pass it.
I just want to go on the record too and say that I don't think that the road should be opened.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where I
That's it.
started. Yeah,
That's right.
it's just not safe.
Well, I will mark it on my calendar to bring this back to everybody sometime in March, maybe, after we have had some more outreach with the community and have a clear plan to move forward, and the council can give us your thoughts at that point.
Okay.
Yeah, just don't spend too much money doing it.
Okay, go ahead.
Not a problem.
I liked Councilmember Papenford's idea about maybe Friday, Saturday, Sunday, maybe for this first year to see how that looks. Like you said, maybe next year's budget can look different. I just want to keep in mind staff time as well. I know that's something that's you have voiced and you're being very clear about that, and I do hear you. So I don't know how anyone else would be down for Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
I think, we're going to have to, we need to be able
Bring
to
it back.
compromise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Figure out something that works for a lot of different parties.
Model Ts only.
What's that?
Model Ts
Yes.
only.
I mean, maybe it's Sunday,
Need a
Monday,
trun- If they don't have a
Tuesday, I don't know.
trundle seat, they can't go up.
We will develop a plan and bring it back to you.
Okay.
And either for a vote, which I'm sensing a little, well, we'll see.
Yeah, there's.
We'll make a plan.
It could be a tie break.
Yeah, the mayor's involved.
Exciting.
I think it's happened once since I've been on. Okay.
I was gonna talk about
The
some.
moment we've been waiting for. If we could just get-
Finally.
If we could just get Bill off of his phone.
Is it Candy Crush?
Oh, has
Is that
it?
what you're
Angry Birds.
Okay.
Come on, Justin.
high score?
All right. Anybody need to take a break? Christie, do you have the presentation? Excellent. Community Development Department wanted to be able to give you an update on the status of a lot of projects that are out there that have received their approvals over the last several years, just so you have a better sense of what's going on citywide. So without further ado, I would first mention Catherine Dunleavy is here as well. She had put together that spreadsheet that was in the packet. But first thing to note is that over the last 6 years or so, my department has processed and approved well over 500 different applications that have come into our doors. And these do not include building permits. So these are land use applications of various types, administrative reviews, limited impacts and variances, as well as major impact reviews and annexations. Obviously been pretty busy, and these are what lay the groundwork for the development that you see happening out there on the ground. Obviously tends to be lag time between approvals of land use applications and then when my department sees building permits actually come in the door, building permit applications, and then obviously further lag time before those units receive their certificates of occupancy or COs. That lag time can be anywhere between several months and several years. Next slide, please. So currently, via those applications, especially the limited impact reviews and the major impact reviews that we have seen processed and have been approved through this body or through Planning Commission over the last several years, we have approximately 1,666 units entitled at this point. These are the number of units that are out there in various stages of development, anywhere from we have not seen a building permit to they've submitted building permit applications to they've received their actual permit approval and are being built but are not yet CO'd, okay? So these include units that have come from a variety of different development projects of varying sizes, approximately 830 accounted for in that. Up to 400 units that are entitled out in the South Arc neighborhood, that portion of the Vanderveer Plan Development that was approved last year. And then up to currently 435 units within the other privately owned portions of the Vanderveer Plan Development. So that's where that 1,666 unit number comes from. This number does not, however, include some other projects that are out there, including the Angel View Plan Development, which is still under review. It will be coming to City Council here in the near future. Permitted one-off units within historically platted lots within city limits. Permitted ADUs. The Places to Age project that has recently been discussed, nor the East Side Senior Living project that the city is in the process of trying to acquire. Next slide. Oh, yep. So of those over 1,600 units, that equates to approximately 430 inclusionary housing units that are entitled or anticipated. And that's 158 from varying projects of varying sizes, a minimum of 200 that would come from the city-owned South Arc neighborhood, and a minimum of 73 units from the other privately owned Vanderveer Plan Development projects. That also does not include anything that may come out of the Places to Age project or that property, nor the East Side Senior Living. Go ahead and next. So this was the spreadsheet that was included in the packet. The numbers we just kind of discussed are all encapsulated in the circle on this particular slide. So if you want to look into it any closer or have any other questions, we certainly can help explain that. I'll continue here. Next slide. So some notable residential or mixed-use projects that are out there and in the process of being developed. the Two Rivers Commons, and Two Rivers South Side vicinity all around the South Arkansas River on the east side of Highway 50. 88 out of the approximately 273 units are anticipated to be built are complete. So roughly a quarter of those. In Confluent Park, you've got a little over probably 15%, 31 out of about 229 units that are entitled out there have been completed. And in River Ridge, about a third, about 20 out of about 64 units complete in that particular subdivision. These are all over on the southeast side of town. Next slide. West End subdivision, they have 11 out of the 44 units complete, including 6 townhomes that recently are in the process of getting their CO through Chafee Housing Trust to be sold at very affordable levels comparative to the market. And then Chafee Housing Trust also has the project at the corner of 3rd and M, which is really at the precipice of being completed and receiving their COs. Next slide. And then for some projects that have not yet started up, we've got South Ark neighborhood and the 2 or 3 of the other privately owned portions of the Vanderveer PD. So 0 out of the 835 units have been completed there. Salida Crossings plan development, which is the picture I have here. They've done a lot of groundwork, but none of those units are yet complete. Flour Mill, of course, more recently, no work has yet begun out there. 505 Oak Street plan development, which is right next door to the fire station. There's 44 units there, none of them yet complete, though sounds like they'll be coming in for building permits fairly soon. And then, of course, the city's Space to Create First and D Apartments, which is still in the process. Some non-residential projects, the fire station obviously being the biggest one. I actually heard from David earlier today that this is probably closer to 90% complete. So we're really getting close on that one. And then the Area Agency on Aging offices that are out in the Confluent Park area, about 6,500 square feet of commercial office space out there. Those building permits are in and under review currently. So just a quick overview of the geographic distribution of these bigger projects. Obviously, a whole bunch of them are on the southeast side of town. The yellow are the residential projects or mixed-use projects, and the red are the commercial or institutional projects. Smattering of some of the smaller projects around town as well, but the vast majority of the growth happening on that southeast side of town, a little bit out to the west as well. Next slide. So this year through last week, we've seen kind of a slowing of the overall number of total building permits. You can see how the total permits have ranged between about 170 and 250 over the last few years. Thus far, we've only received about 107 in, but the actual number of new residential units has more or less stayed the same. And we still have at least a couple months of 2024 to go for that number to go up. But it's not a big surprise, and it's not much of a surprise primarily because of all the talk at the national level around interest rates. You can go to the next slide. When they started talking, well, obviously interest rates have risen over the last year and a half. This puts a big pause on folks, developers of all shapes and sizes, in wanting to borrow that money, because that money then becomes a lot more expensive the higher the interest rate. The conversations have been over the last several months that those interest rates are likely to fall. And so predictably, we saw a lot fewer building permits coming in. And as folks were really waiting to see what was going to happen with those interest rates. And we anticipate, especially, they cut them at the last meeting. We anticipate another cut here in the upcoming meeting, and potentially more going into 2025. So we would expect that this is going to spur a lot of growth, that the 1,666 units that are out there, many of which do not have their permits in yet, we might see movement on that. And I have a feeling we're going to be extremely busy in our department as that starts to happen. So with that, it was just kind of an overview of what's going on out there, and happy to, Catherine or myself can take questions if you have any.
I just had a question, just because it goes back to around the time I started on council. I know you mentioned there's been some dirt moved at Salida Crossings. When is that movement going to translate into dwellings? Do we
Wish I could look into the crystal ball. They have been, actually, Catherine, do you want to speak to the last
the
bits
first
of
thing
communication
we
you've had
discussed?
on that one?
I know.
2018.
So they, on the townhome units, they've had those permits for over a year now. And I believe they're about to start foundation work on them. On the mixed-use buildings, those permits have been at the county since April. So they still have to pay the county permit fee, which is a sizable fee. But one of the things that's holding them up right now is they're working with CDOT and the owner of the old 7-Eleven lot regarding access, for how the access is going to change for that lot with the roundabout, the future roundabout. It's modifying some things, and so they're seeing what they can do, possibly take access through the Salida Crossings lot to get to that 7-Eleven lot. So that's one of the current things going on.
Thank you.
There are foundations in the ground there. There's probably about 6 or 7 foundations in the ground
Okay.
right now.
So then they told me recently they were expecting to pour them soon.
So that's where they're at as far as I know. It's going slow.
I have a related question. How's it going with the code now that building permits have slowed down a little bit and getting ready to explode again?
Yeah, we've actually, of course, we had to bring on some more staff to replace staff that was lost. But we, there's a lot of training involved there, but everybody's doing great. And it's actually allowed Catherine and I to jump back into it as much as we can. And of course, when you're working, we have our consultant that we're working with who has other accounts as well. And there's been a lot of starting and stopping. So we have to also get back onto their schedule. And we did actually have another meeting with them last week. We're hoping to set some up here in the coming weeks, and really hope to be able to produce a draft consolidated code, as it's called, hopefully by the end of the year, if not sooner, to get out in front of folks. But we do want to at least get out in front of our land use advisory committee first, and before we bring it to the general public, get their feedback on some things. So we'll just see how quickly our consultant can turn things around as far as staff comments, as far as the advisory committee comments, and get it out there in front of everyone.
Thank you. Sounds like exciting progress.
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything this evening? Appreciate all the hard work, and
Yeah.
it's a lot to juggle.
Thank you guys, yeah, it's great.
Yeah, especially when we're hearing like we're not really doing much. This is super important. I really love to just be able to point at this, just do a deep dive. Do a deep dive.
There's a lot going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I believe we are done. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.
All right, good night.
Oh, thanks. A lot of stuff going on. And it's since 2000.
There's my little pop-up.
And I wonder how many's been done in the last, I wish he would put dates. Maybe I'll talk to him. and say, when were these?
I just signed
Since
in.
2000, what are the dates?
Oh, yeah, she was, yeah, I know. She's so quick at that court stuff.
It has. I remember when they came with plans.
Yeah. Yeah, she has court this Friday.
It's been a while.
It's ready for the weather to change.
I know, that's what I just thought.
I'm not. You are? No, but I didn't get much of a summer, so I'm not.
Judging by.
Tell you what, I've got see what I have in here to help you.
I'm excited.
Yes, David.
Yeah, you're.
This is my first animal sacrifice in alpaca. Mountain gods and to feed us. Yeah,
Oh, someone left their helmet.
it was. It's actually, because it was so intentional and such reverence and, yeah. Yeah, they do care. They're very, very connected to they wouldn't survive without that.
Show me the projector.
I think they'll come talk.
What's that?
I think something tomorrow.